Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the last episode of Empire PharmD, a show for you to kickstart your career for Doctor of Pharmacy. Join me again today with Empire Pharmacist, Dr. Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen, let me start off by asking, how have you enjoyed creating this show so far?
This has been a really fun experience, and Ryan has a lot of really great questions for me. I think that we are going to, have a lot of really awesome content for the listeners out there.
Great, and I hope you all watching right now are enjoying the content we are creating for you as well. And before we start today's topic, don't forget to check out our contents and as well as subscribing. Let's start off, reflecting your role as a clinical pharmacist. Now you pass through your rotations, you finish your residency. Now you're, clinical pharmacist. What were the good parts, or how about the ones that were less satisfactory?
The good parts about being a clinical pharmacist or the,
Yes.
the process. Oh, okay. Well, I so I think it's all about why, right? You're in pharmacy. For me, when I started pursuing pharmacy, it was a lot of my parents wanting me to pursue it because it was a stable, happy career. All of that stuff that your immigrant parents may tell you, and part of it's accurate, part of it's not super accurate. But for me, as I've gone through my training and I've gone through just learning about pharmacy, residency, and all of the stuff that I went through, I've really adopted this identity of being a healthcare provider. And everything that I do in my work day to day is to help my patients and support my patients. And so maybe the best parts of my job on a day to day basis is that I get to directly care for my patients in a way that a pharmacist can by being at the bedside, providing education, or working with the medicine team and giving them advice on the best therapeutic regimens for those patients. And making sure that they're safe, making sure that they're working, effective, and that I see benefits when I'm making those recommendations. For example, I recommended to adjust a diabetes regimen, and now the diabetes and the blood sugar is a lot better. That makes me feel really good that I've done something fulfilling in my career of like helping other people, helping people's lives and patients' lives, and helping them to get better. Um, but of course, in all careers, there's always going to be a downside to everything. Sometimes it's the bureaucracy of everything. Healthcare is quite broken, and sometimes there's not much that you could do about it. Your patients are not adherent to medications. Part of it is because you're dealing with people. You're taking care of people at the end of the day, and it's not going to be perfect. It's it's horrible sometimes. You're frustrated sometimes. You're frustrated at the people, you're frustrated at the system, and then you're also frustrated at your coworkers because you're dealing with people. And in a very stressful situation as well. I think that sometimes there could be toxic work environment that plays a role, and this is has a lot to do with the standard that you put in healthcare providers. You make one wrong move and you can kill somebody, and I'm not saying that to say that. It's true, especially if you work in a hospital. It's a very stressful environment. But even if you work in retail and wherever, it's also stressful. So that can lead to so much burnout and exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. Um, so at the end of the day, like what I love is taking care of patients, but sometimes that process can be very draining.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that, especially when you mentioned about sometimes things is just not in your hand. Like, this again, you talked about patient adherence to medications or things that it's just because the system doesn't allow you to do it. Having like a certain like transition of care between like a general practice versus like a specialty. There's that period where none of the drugs work for that patient, and the patients just need to ride through that period, and things like that. That just kind of like it's like sometimes, as a person who have experience so far in the community setting, just like what else can we do better for the patient instead of just calling both sides. of the conversation, right? What else can we do to help the patient to get the needs of their health needs, um, get it fixed? So I think that was something that was reflected upon, from even my own personal experience. Was like, what are things that we can do better, in healthcare so that we can provide better
Mm-hmm.
care, not just the clinical side of things, but also in terms of like, financially, right? Someone couldn't maybe just couldn't afford insurance, or someone just couldn't, be able to have that good of access to healthcare due to status, um, and things like that in general. I guess moving on to the, you talk about, the importance of, um, mental health, or maintaining, you know, trying to stay positive, during your career. Did you ever actually felt trapped or burned out in your role as a clinical pharmacist?
Yes. And I would attribute a lot of that to the pandemic. I mean, talk about a stressful time. I was in the hospital for during the pandemic, and there was a lot of things that I witnessed, not pandemic wise, but the pandemic really exposed the cracks in healthcare, and then it exposed just so much that I was not aware of. And so, I'm kind of in that situation, kind of what you mentioned before, where I'm like, what else can we do to fix this? And it's just that overwhelming sense of like, I don't know if the problems that we see can be fixed that easily. And that leads you to a lot of just like, what is the whole point of this? Kind of like an existential crisis in a way. But in terms of burnout, it was, um, I think a lot of it was emotional burnout, just seeing so many patients in the hospital, at that time during the pandemic, and just kind of doing, your workload is huge, but you're also doing the same things over and over again. It's just COVID after COVID after COVID after COVID. And you start to kind of like, you kind of lose the sense of why you're there. It's just like constant, you're like becoming a robot at this point. Um, so I definitely felt that level of burnout. I also felt just not enough support from the administrators at the hospital. Um, Hospitals made a lot of mistakes during the pandemic. A lot of it too at the time was in like the administrators, like the political, like in the presidency administration with like masking shortage. There was just so much unnecessary stress, ventilator shortage. There was just a lot of things going on, medication shortages all the time, arguments and debates of what works and what doesn't work, what therapy works. Things were changing so fast. So yeah, I think that was a huge acceleration to my burnout. But in general, if the pandemic hadn't happened, I think that in general, burnout would have had been there anyways, just because, um, how hospital administrations just really kind of, you know, metrics after metrics, like putting all these expectations and pressures on the healthcare providers without a lot of support. That leads to a lot of feeling trapped and burned out as well. One thing I think, I don't know if you asked this question about feeling trapped, but I would say sometimes pharmacists do feel trapped. Like I'm in the hospital acute care setting. If I ever wanted to branch out and do ambulatory care now, that's actually a really difficult path because they're like, well, you've been in the hospital like for 10 years. You don't have any outpatient experience. Why would we hire you?
Yeah, yeah,
There is that
that's
massive
what I've
sense of
heard as
feeling
well.
trapped.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's not
yeah.
great.
Mhm.
Pharmacists or the pharmacy profession needs to allow more flexibility. If I am tired of working in the hospital, I don't want those hours anymore. I don't want to have to work weekends anymore. And I want to work in the ambulatory care setting. I have clinical knowledge. I've been able to take care of patients in the past. Allow me the opportunity to switch. But that's not as easy as it's done. So that is probably one of the biggest issues too in pharmacy is that feeling of trapped.
Yeah, I mean, imagine even, you're talking about, you still have the clinical knowledge to apply from, acute care to ambulatory care in certain sense. Imagine if a retail pharmacist just say, screw retail, I want to go to like am care with no residency or prior experience except for rotations, which is maybe a couple of years ago. That's definitely something that's, you know really hard to change. That's what I heard, because what like, heard from a lot of different pharmacists, they all said like, during pharmacy school, that is your best opportunity to experience everything. so you should experience as much as you can. So I guess is that common something that you think of as well?
I hope that mm, I hope that that's not like a statement that will deter people from switching jobs if they want to. Because I've seen people in the retail setting move on to be in clinical acute care setting. There's a few people that work in my hospital now that does not had not done a residency, and they were able to do that. And I've talked to so many people that were able to make that switch, but it takes a lot more effort, right? So that means that you may have to go and work in a hospital where it's like rural, like a place where maybe not a lot of other people want to live in, but that's an opportunity for you if that's truly what you want. Or you may need to take an additional course and gain those knowledge. And then perhaps you may need to get a board certification in some way. But the biggest thing is networking, networking, networking. If you are like best friends with a hiring manager at a hospital, right? Like, not okay, maybe not best friends, but if you are in contact with, um, in connection with somebody who does a lot of hiring for hospitals, and you have a great track record of like, I was able to do this and like increase this and do all these great things at this retail store, you can go to this hiring manager just from the side and say, yo, like, I have all these great skills. I can do this for your pharmacy. I can do that. I've been able to do this and that, and like show off your skills. So I don't want people to think pharmacy school is it. That is how you're going to make your mark, and then once you're out, you're stuck, you know? Like I don't want people to feel that way, because for me, I felt trapped as a clinical hospital pharmacist, but I've made a huge stride. I'm on LinkedIn. I am posting about my experiences as a pharmacist, but not only am I posting about that, I'm showcasing what I have been able to do as a clinical pharmacist. I have different patient cases that I say, hey, because I was there, I was able to fix this problem. And most recently, I was applying to this job that ended up not really being what I wanted it to be. So I didn't pursue it very much, but it was a LinkedIn thing where I saw, oh, there was a LinkedIn job opportunity that I thought was interesting. And I went on the LinkedIn page of that business and connected with some people there, told them how excited and passionate I am about the field. And they connected me with the chief medical officer, and I got to talk to the CMO of that company directly to see if we were a good fit for each other. I didn't even really apply to I guess I did apply, but I got put right to the face of the CMO. You know what I mean? And it was not a hospital job. So there's opportunities, you know, you just have to really put yourself out there.
Yeah, talking about opportunities, right? What are some opportunities do you believe pharmacists should have that were not currently present or in limited access to expand their roles in a healthcare team?
I think a lot of people may say prescribing or prescribing medications would be a big one. Um, I I mean, I definitely think prescribing is great, but I also think that we should be, if that includes reimbursement, then that's fine. That's actually better. I feel like pharmacists should be reimbursed. Like it's all about money. It's all about like the financial stuff. Yeah, okay, we can prescribe, but like, are we going to make any money off of that? You know what I mean? Um, so I would focus on getting reimbursement. I would maybe rather have a service where I can provide just medication review for older folks and be able to bill their insurance for that. I may not prescribe any of it, but I can provide one on one education. I can go over medications individually with patients. I can make sure they're taking it properly. I can educate them on why. That has nothing to that has nothing to do with prescribing. But that has everything to do with what I can do as a pharmacist. And if I can bill for that service, if I can, you know, find a way to tell insurance companies that this is valuable, I would pursue that path for pharmacists. You can have that in an independent pharmacy, have people do consultations there. You can have a retail pharmacy. So I know a lot of us are looking towards like, oh, let's prescribe medications. Yeah, I'm okay with prescribing. I can prescribe now working for the Veterans Affairs, but I don't really use that. I don't do that as much because I just go and talk to the providers to make changes. What I do all the time is reviewing medications, making sure that it's right, making sure that it's appropriate, making sure that the dose is um, yeah, appropriate for everybody. So what pharmacists do is a lot of those medication reviews, and I'd rather get reimbursed for that type of, service. But Other people may disagree. I think that's just where I am. Also, transition of care
Hmm.
service is a huge one that pharmacists need to be
Yeah.
involved in. And if we can get reimbursed for that, oh boy, is that going to change what pharmacists can do in the outpatient setting, in the inpatient setting, and everywhere. So that's big.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard as well in terms of like reimbursements and things that we actually recently did a video just talking about like the importance of having pharmacists being reimbursed as some of the top five current issues in pharmacy. And I didn't cover much because I didn't have like the biggest perspective, but I think what you covered was very important as well. And I really like the point where you say like it's not all about prescribing, but in my view, it's all also about potentially deprescribing because there are so many patients with different types of medications, and there are sometimes patients are just confused, like, okay, I just take this every day, but I don't even know what it's for, or even like, do I even need this anymore? So I think that maybe
Yeah,
that even like help the healthcare system to reduce the amount of money we're like going through. So,
deprescribing is an
um,
interesting one. I
yeah.
I definitely want to learn more about that, especially in the hospital setting. Patients will come in with like all sorts of medications, and you're like, yeah, why are you on all these meds? But yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, actually, moving on to that, you did mention about being active on LinkedIn. Just this is like kind of like a general question to kind of conclude the show. Why social media, and how have your experience contributed to the point in educating the next generation of pharmacists through, through the widespread of social media, either LinkedIn, Instagram, or now you have your own podcast, and stuff like that.
Yes, I do have my own podcast. It's called Hey Friends, Hey RX Friends. We got this, and we're super excited to launch that. But social media is not for everybody. I'll be honest with you on that, right? The point of social media, though, is making connections and networking and showing off your skills, showing yourself, like showing up for yourself. So you could do that in other arenas. You can definitely attend different meetings, connect with people that way if you're not interested in social media. The whole point, though, is to put yourself out there and to showcase your skills. So, social media is one of the easiest ways to do that, and it's also free. Um, I think that social media is also important for people like creators like myself who feel like they don't necessarily have a platform or who feel like they don't want to be limited by a platform. I can definitely go to APHA, ASHP, all these different organizations and put out my ideas and my products. But I can do it on my own timetable if I do it on social media and still find the audience for it. So I'm not limited by somebody else. Plus, I get to own a lot of my work too, which I think is ideal. And I get to connect with a lot more people that way. So I really prefer social media in that sense. Getting to showcase what I know, and even talking to you today, Brian, and sharing my stories and my experiences for the future generations, I may not get that opportunity if I went through a different channel. Social media is a really easy way to make these kinds of connections and finding that audience. And so I really enjoy it so far. Um, but also, I've been able to connect with people that can be my future employers in the future. I mean, there's so many opportunities. I don't want people to sleep on it. It is very intimidating, though. It's not for everybody, like I said, but it's a really great tool. But I do have a new podcast that is coming out, and that is also to share more of my stories and more of my experiences as a pharmacist. So I definitely hope that more people can join us on that as well, because if you want the real truth about pharmacy, and I so far have been pretty honest, um, I want more people to see that side of pharmacy.
Yeah, link will be in the description, and make sure to go check that. Everyone, make sure and go check that. Yeah. All right. So, any tips to set personal goals for pharmacy students, residents, pharmacists out there, either in or out of pharmacy? Like, any tips on that?
No, my biggest tip for you is to always ask yourself what you want As a immigrant child or a child of an immigrant family, I think I saw somewhere on YouTube the other day that's like immigrant children do not get asked what they want because that is not an important question ever. But you are living your own life. So you need to be asking yourself, what is it that you want in this life, in this career, in this relationship, whatever it is that you're doing, and be honest with yourself. If you realize, hey, actually, I don't really like what I'm doing right now, start finding ways to change it. But if you never ask yourself and you just expect other people to tell you what to do all the time, eventually that's going to be very exhausting for yourself because you feel like you're just pleasing other people. So start asking yourself what you want on a regular basis, every quarter. Be like, am I going the right path right now? Is this what I want? Do I need to make a change? No? Okay. But that's probably my biggest advice.
All right. Thank you so much for the great advice to conclude our episode today. I hope you enjoy our collaboration in this show, and we wish you all the best for your content creation with the podcast and maybe other future contents. Feel free to provide us with any feedbacks and comments. As always, hit the like if you enjoyed it to share this with your peers. Click subscribe and notification bell for our latest content. Go give a follow on our social media. And thank you everyone for watching. And don't forget to empower your PharmD. Thank you.
Thank you.